Okay, everybody, welcome to our university and welcome to this visit of Sam Altman. I mean, we're in campaign mode, so you're seeing a lot of politicians filling with the arena, so let's try and keep this room today full of energy so that Sam, this is the best trip on his listening tour, on his global tour. You should all feel, very privileged to be here. We could have doubled the amount of people that came here. There's people outside pretending to be me and all sorts of things to try and get in here. So whatever you're going to do, so as I tell all people in my class, put away your laptops, put away your phones. During the pandemic, we long for human contact. So let's try and embrace the human contact of all being in this room together. So can I ask you to put your hands together, please, for a big IE University welcome for Sam Altman. Joining us with Sam today, we have Mo. So do you want to give a big wave to the audience? And also we say to Elena, bienvenida a casa. No, Elena?
Thank you.
Where did the guy I used to know from Y Combinator in cargo pants suddenly end up talking to Congress? What happened?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us here. This has been an awesome visit. It's been great to see the energy and what people are doing in Spain with the technology, and we just had a super fun time. I still mostly wear cargo pants. This is like unusual for me. We dressed up to meet some politicians this morning, and I haven't had a chance to change, but this is still not my.
Okay, but in the sense of how your life has changed, I mean, it's got to be different. I mean, you went from a quiet guy, now you're talking to Patrick Collison, John Collison, you're talking to, literally, I find you on YouTube every day.
I've been friends with those guys since I was a kid. It's actually not that different. We still just work super hard every day trying to figure out how to build new technology, and it kind of feels the same, except when I have to dress up.
Okay. There's another Silicon Valley, I guess, you could call him tech mogul, who's in Spain right now, a guy called Jeffrey Bezos. So why are you here today with us?
Look, I can't think of anything more exciting to work on than trying to make AGI. It has been the most fun thing I've ever done, the most fun thing I can imagine doing. I think this is going to transform the world in super positive ways, but I worry that we're going to get stuck too much in the San Francisco echo chamber and not get a good sense of the values of the world, how people are using this technology, what people want, what people are nervous about. And the only way I've ever found to do that is to travel around and meet people. We just came from a great meeting with a bunch of developers working on this, and we want to listen. We want the feedback. We want to make sure we represent the hopes and the values of the world in this. I love traveling in general, so I'm happy to have the excuse for it, but really don't know any other way to figure this out.
Okay, fantastic. Let's talk to Mo a bit. So Mo, you can tell us how this ChatGPT thing actually works.
If I want to tell all the details, I don't know. Maybe Sam would not be super happy about it. But basically, there's two stages: pre-training, where you learn all sorts of things about the world and trained on very massive set of data, and then there's a second stage of post-training where we basically try to make it very specific to chat. And a surprising fact about ChatGPT is we had these kind of systems for months before it, 6 months, 8 months before this, weaker model than ChatGPT, but it's still pretty good chatbots, and we were kind of desensitized about it. And then I think around November, where people got suddenly more serious about, let's do an experiment with it and put it out in the world. And we didn't expect it to be such a massive success and such a massive thing in the world to that change of interface. And it wasn't, in some sense, it wasn't that different from GPT-3, but those small details and the post-training part really, really made a difference there.
Yeah. I think there are 3 miracles, or sort of 3 big breakthroughs that have happened here and that point to the future. Number 1, the field, not OpenAI, but the field, we figured out an algorithm that actually truly can learn. And so we can feed in a ton of data, trillions of words from the internet, and the algorithm can learn the relationships between them and apply them in novel ways. And that was not obvious to people. In fact, a lot of experts said that was not going to happen. Number two, that algorithm gets predictably better with scale. So we can say if we put in this much more compute or this much more of an efficient algorithm, we can predict how good the result is going to be. And then number three, sorry, there's some feedback.
There's a bit of an echo. Don't worry about it.
No, it's just the screeching feedback. And then number three, which Mo just touched on, with very little data, we can push the behavior of these models to behave with whatever value system or in whatever way we would like. And that also was totally non-obvious. And so those three things together mean we see a pretty positive path forward. There's still some open questions, how long it's going to take us for these models to be able to provide novel scientific insight and help us drive forward progress that way. Maybe it's really soon, maybe it takes a while. But I think we have all the ingredients we need to drive this very far forward.
Okay, let's move to Elena. Elena, you're here as a representative of the AI community. So talk to me about ChatGPT and how it has changed the work you do.
Well, here at EI, I'm teaching, but I'm also working as a researcher trying to work on language models with the project Clibrain, which is a project that has been developed into the Center for Governmental Change. And the target was to apply the results of the research that we had done over 5 years across multilingual poetry in Europe to the songs of lyrics that we are processing in order to improve recommendation systems. So we have started working for Spanish because there is a big gap in Latin music and we are listening to music more and more. And we have discovered that we can improve recommendation using content and applying embeddings and similarity tools to improve this recommendation. We were working on that and about to finish the project when all this revolution of ChatGPT arose, and we did not only get the embeddings and the recommendation, but we did also music generation, applying and using GPT. So what we created was a music mixer using lyrics to combine songs from different authors. And we realized that the possibilities of applying this to creativity and to private users instead of B2B systems was a big change in terms of usability of the tools. That was like the big change that we perceived from the research point of view. Although when you are coming from research, you see that this is not just a leap that comes in a moment, that it's just an evolution. And from time to time, the algorithms that we have been training for embeddings and for everything are just evolving and being trained with a lot of data. So now we are at the moment where we see that there is a big change in usability from the point of view that everyone can use it for many different purposes, and that's a big lesson learned from our research work to the real world that we are seeing now.
Okay, let me move to ask about Sam and Mo how they use ChatGPT themselves. I mean, you've had access to it for right from the beginning, so you can work through it. So talk to me about how you use it yourself.
We use it a lot for coding, not just writing code, helping debug code, helping figure out answers. We're trying to connect it more towards all the knowledge inside of OpenAI. The vision here is really to get to something that is like a super assistant that can help you with all of your knowledge work. So it sees all the data you see, it knows about any conversation you want, it knows about any context you want, and you can give it little tasks, and it can go off and do those, and eventually it can do more and more complex tasks. So right now, the tasks that I use it for are pretty simple. They're around summarization, or translation has been something I've used it for a lot on this trip. But over time, I hope that it'll help me with every task I do on my computer all day.
I mean, you put your email into it, Sam, don't you? I mean,
to summarize, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mo?
I use it for everything that Sam mentioned, but a few specific use cases. At the end of the year, at OpenAI and most companies, we have performance reviews that you have to write reviews for your colleagues, like how they did, and it's not really fun. So basically, I really like writing a few bullet points and asking it to expand it into a nice, cogent message, and it's really excellent at that. It's possible that the person also takes the same thing that I wrote and translate it back using ChatGPT to the original bullet points, but I think it's still this is for writing, for me, it's like a huge help. Also for data science, there's the code interpreter, which is like a feature on top of ChatGPT, which allows to execute code within that the model writes directly. And I think that has been very useful for analyzing data and all sorts of research that you'll do as part of your job.
Yeah, in our case, we started using ChatGPT for our internal tools for productivity. So I started Clibrain, and then we were trying to use GPT just for increasing productivity, marketing, creating content, and then realized that everyone was using that. So we tried to understand which were the best uses and to create an environment to boost that productivity and to, let's say, help people with the prompt, which is perhaps the most difficult thing, and especially when you work in Spanish, that's something the translation and the prompting engineer is not so accurate like it is in English. So we tried to build a prompter system in Spain, and we created an internal tool which is called CliChat that we are now working to expand outside the company through Clibrain. And that was fantastic because we see that the productivity started to increase a lot. So marketing, communication, product people, and also sales team started to use it in order, which is the next best argument that I need to give to a customer. But we have real numbers of people that it's using that. So when I see the journals and I see that companies are started to ban this, I feel terrified because we are using so much that for our own productivity that when you learn how to use it, the speed that you can get is incredible.
Let's talk about culture, because one of the things, when I look at what I do for a living is I examine scale-up companies, and one of the things that, the success and the quality of the product you've created was by no means a certainty. I mean, people laughed about neural networks and things like that in the beginning. So just talk to me about, you had to, do all of the things that a startup founder has to have. You had to hire the right people. You had to make sure they were working on the right things. Just talk to me about that journey.
Look, I think every great startup is unique in some important ways, and then there's some things that are just the standards that you should not try to innovate on. So any startup needs great people. Any startup eventually needs to build a great product, although it took OpenAI 4.5 years to launch our first product, and it certainly wasn't great then. So we kind of broke all the standards there. But there's a lot of things that are standard advice, and you should try to follow that. But beyond the very standards, I am a big believer in not listening to advice. I think almost nothing that you can learn about doing a startup, you can learn in school or kind of in most regular jobs. Startups are just these weird things, and you learn them by doing. And the critical skill is this tight iterative feedback loop and having the company develop a sense of increasing internal conviction over time. So when we started, we said we're going to build AGI. At the time, that was considered a totally crazy thing to say. We got really made fun of by all the scientists. They said no credible AI researcher could ever go work here because they say these crazy things. But we all looked around the room and we said, we don't know how we're going to do it. Probably will fail, but let's try. And even though it took a long time, we didn't ever lose sight of that conviction, and we just kept working towards it. It helped that we believed that it was really important to do and maybe possible. So, very valuable, maybe unlikely, but not prevented by the laws of physics. And that can sustain you through a lot. You need a lot of other people who have the same sort of intense self-belief and determination. And we had to figure out how to run a research lab. There have not been a lot of great research labs in recent memory outside of academia. And for the first 4.5 years, we were a research lab. And we did a lot of very dumb things. But we said we're just going to keep pushing on the science. We have reason to believe that this path can work. And there's a fine balance between not ignoring internal output, but not letting it knock you off of your convictions. So you still want to listen to other people, but you want to really consider every criticism. And just because people criticize you doesn't mean they're right, particularly when it comes to research. And so we built this culture that had a lot of elements that are important in ways that aren't obvious. Like, one of the things that I think is not obvious about OpenAI is we are extremely careful with every detail of the stack. We think we are the product of getting 200 small components perfect. And for our kind of research, this really matters. And it's not a culture that many startups have. And so we had to really build that, just as one example of many.
And Mo, how would you describe the OpenAI culture?
I think it's a fantastic culture. I think being able to, it's very hard to have a research lab within a startup because all the rule books of startups have written from the perspective of engineering organization. You build a product, you test it, and you're not supposed to do R&D research, like R&D, at the same time. You're basically bringing a product to the market, and you're verifying whether there's a market for it. Here, you're trying to even build a thing that you don't know whether you can even build it. Mm-hmm. So most of the time, so it's a very different type of a startup, I think.
I think one of our innovations was most companies have built an R&D lab inside of a company, and that has generally sucked. And we built a company inside an R&D lab, and it's a really important difference, and I think more people should try it.
Okay, Elena, I mean, I imagine, do you have difficulty attracting people to work for your organization, or is this what generative AI is what everyone wants to work on now?
It's always hard to recruit the best people, no matter what. Like, we spend so much of our time on it. I still spend like way over a third of my time on it. I think it is the single biggest determinant to success of a company that you can control. And I think it is like everyone understands that in theory and still spends not nearly enough time on it.
Yeah, I mean, you're fighting against like DeepMind and other organizations. I guess it's like a footballer, right? When someone scores goals, two clubs want them. It's the same kind of thing, yeah?
Sort of, but the most important talent we hire is not the well-known talent. The thing that we are really good at is trying to discover people that are not being fought over because they may not be well-known, finding them, convincing them that they can really contribute to this field. And a lot of our most important work has not come from the well-known football stars in the field.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's very important what you said about R&D, because actually you need to be updated in everything that's happening. So if you have not connection with R&D, your technology can be not up to date in a very quick way. So as we were coming from research world, we have attracted many talents that were also working in research. But in Spain, for example, it's not so easy to mix university with companies and to change this talent from the, let's say, research world to the pressure of a company. So keeping this equilibrium between R&D, building model, and all those things, and reading papers and productivity every day is the highest challenge that we have now. But we are trying to keep it going because I think it's the key of doing something that is different.
So let's talk then a bit about Europe. So we get a lot of people coming from Silicon Valley, and their images of Europe isn't that great. You know, they tend to think Europe is like churches and holidays and stuff like that. What's your impression of the talent in Europe?
Yeah, I always get really sad to hear that, and I think it's really unfair. A significant fraction of OpenAI's talent is European. Like OpenAI would not have happened without Europeans. Full stop. It is, I think, remarkable the quality of the talent from Europe. Working in Europe, you know, in Silicon Valley on this sort of technology, it has been, not just Europe, I mean the rest of the world too, but especially Europe has been a place of incredible talent density for us and for others in the field. I always get very sad when people say, you know, Europe is a place for museums and shopping. That's never been my experience of it. But I think it's on like all of you to make sure that Europe is like a tech hub of the world and a place of innovation. There are challenges for sure, but all of the raw ingredients are here, and people just have to like have the commitment and want to do it. I think the capital situation used to be tougher. I know it's still not as good as Silicon Valley, but my experience running YC for a long time was that it got better and better every year. There's like a bunch of legal changes that I would make if I were like in control of Europe for a day that would make startups and innovation better. Wow, nervous laughter. But I don't think that should stop you all, and I think a strong Europe is really important to the world, and the only way, the best way to have a strong Europe is to be a leader with technology and innovation in addition to being a leader in regulation.
Okay, so Mo, I'm going to ask you about GDPR. I mean, what do you know what it is, of course. What do you think about GDPR? Which has been Europe's, in some ways, that's the big thing that has. Is it something you talk about much, or is it something that's going on over in Europe?
The GDPR regulation? I mean, we are mostly thinking about the next set of regulation, which is the EU AI Act, and less about GDPR these days. And I think GDPR has had its shortcomings and benefits. It mostly has benefited bigger companies and has hurted smaller companies. We really want EU AI Act, which is happening now, to go in a better direction and that's part of the reason that we are excited to talk to the leadership across the European Union to influence that act better.
Elena, I just wanted one thing that Spain has done, which is the rider law, including the famous Article 64, which naturalizes algorithm penalizations for job performance. In other words, the Minister for Labour has said that we had to publish algorithms. At the time, and I remember people kind of laughed about it, but that's not far away from the kind of thing Sam is talking about in terms of regulation. So, I mean, Glovo has been a huge fine for other things. But, I mean, do you remember the rider law and the idea of publishing an algorithm? Is that something that you, when it came out, you were surprised at?
Well, when you work in research, we were publishing everything because open science is one of the principles that you need to have, and thanks to that, there are a lot of things that have grown very fast. But the problem is not about publishing or not publishing. The problem is about regulating in an appropriate way, directing the regulation towards the things that we are controlling. The problem that we have now is that there is a big lack of knowledge of what's going on, and then we are trying to over-regulate in order to protect, which is, for me, an error. So we should try to train people on how to use technology, how not to use data, which data you are able to share or not, and these kind of things, and not trying to stop everything and publish big titles in the journals like fear and afraid of and all these kind of things. And in that sense, I'm a bit, let's say, astonished of what's happening, because for me, this is an opportunity to bring companies to the next steps, and especially in Europe, that we have a long tradition of multilingual translation, 27 countries, different languages, and a lot of people that have been working for a long time in this area. And on the other side, especially in Spain, we have our language, which is the second biggest spoken language in the world. 585 million people speaking Spanish in Latin America. So we have an amazing market opportunity that it's not solved from the point of view of AI yet. So we have Argentinian, Chilean, Mexican, and a lot of varieties that we need to reflect, because if we say ahorita or ahora in Mexico and in Spain, it means a completely different thing. And you need to understand that cultural part also, to train AI in this cultural approach in order to make it work when we were to implement in our real day-to-day. And I think that's very, very important, and we need to tell people why we need to go in that way and not to stop or prevent for using AI.
Okay. Sam, when you heard that Italy had an issue with ChatGPT, how did you feel about that?
I think it's very important to get privacy on these things right. Like, this is a technology that's going to impact all of us. We were happy that the Italians let ChatGPT back pretty soon. I think we'll continue to work with other governments around the world about their concerns about privacy and everything else with these models. This is going to shift a lot of the world. We're going to face very big, very significant issues here. We want to be a good partner to governments, but more than that, we want to do what people want. So we want to build a service that people love, that people find value in, that people feel makes their lives better, that they don't feel like they're being pushed into using and they're being attention hacked or anything else. Like, we will try to listen to people as much as we can and make services that really work for them.
Yeah, but Sam, do you see the issue with this is we've had people from Silicon Valley before talk this way, and they've created services that haven't perhaps worked out in the way that we had expected. I'm not blaming you for things that other people did, but you can see that you are here on a listening tour.
Sure.
Therefore, we are here to talk to you about what we feel.
Yeah.
And their companies in Silicon Valley have affected democracy. They've affected things like mental health of children. And they all sort of said things like, we're sorry, we must do better. But I didn't come here to quote the Bible, but there's a verse in Luke that says, "To whom much is given, much is expected," and much has been given to you, so much is expected.
Of course. I think it's totally fair to be skeptical of anybody that shows up from Silicon Valley, given all of the challenges that companies have created. They've done wonderful things too, and I think that totally gets lost in some of these conversations. Like, I think the technology industry has created a tremendous amount of good in the world, and I've been very proud of that, but I've been very embarrassed about some of the other things that have happened. I think it's super reasonable to expect a ton of us, out of us. We can talk about all the work that we've done to make GPT-4 safe and aligned. It's not perfect, but even our biggest critics say it's a huge step forward from earlier models. So don't judge us on our words. That was a mistake with previous versions of Silicon Valley. But do evaluate us on our actions. Look at the way the systems that we've put out work. Look at what we have done to push for proactive regulation. We've been talking about this for a long time. We do think it's very important to put these technologies out into the world while they are still imperfect, because people need time to adapt. If there's going to be AGI in the world in 10 years or whatever, do you really want us to just not deploy anything until it's perfect, which maybe never? Or do you want people to have contact with it earlier so that you all, policymakers, institutions, can understand it, and also so that we can get the feedback and incorporate it and see where people are using these technologies in good ways and bad ways while they're still weak, while they still have limited impact on the world, and adapt. So I think it's totally possible to beat up on tech, and it's kind of well-deserved, to be honest. And it's totally reasonable to say, you've done a bad job in the past, and we have in some ways, but we've done a good job in other ways. What I think is important is to engage with us, to provide feedback, to judge us on what we've put out into the world, and the benefits and the negatives trade-off, not just what we're saying. We're not just going to rely on regulation. We think that's important. What we really care about is doing the right thing, and we're not going to get it right always. We're going to screw up. Probably we're going to screw up big sometimes. We spent 8 months aligning, making GPT-4 safer, testing it after we released it. There were a lot of people calling on us to just release it right away and said, hey, we'll take it. Like, we need this. We can make, we know you have this great thing. We can make education better. We can make healthcare better. The longer you spend on this before you let us have it, you're sort of keeping these things from the world. And these balances are hard. I know we're spending a lot of this conversation talking about the downsides, and I think that's important, and we're happy to do that. The upsides here are tremendous. Like, if everybody in the world gets a great personalized one-on-one tutor in any subject they want, and they can have much better educational outcomes, that's huge. If we all get better tools to be more productive, that's huge. So we are responsible for the technology we put out to some degree. I mean, if you deliberately misuse it, if you get drunk and drive a car 100 miles an hour, that's on you too. But we are responsible for putting out something that is safe as designed, for disclosing the problems. But the benefits have got to be part of the conversation here too.
How should we be embracing ChatGPT?
I think this is going to change education for sure. And I know there's a lot of concern. I understand why. I've read accounts of how math educators felt when the calculator was first invented, saying that math education's over, what are we going to do? This is all pointless. And what happened is you just raised the bar and the expectation and the ability of what people can learn and do. And I think the same thing is going to happen with tools like ChatGPT. ChatGPT is this early preview of where things are going to go. It's very weak. We're going to laugh at it like we laughed at the first iPhone at some point relatively soon. But as these models get more powerful, and every student, every learner can have a unbelievably better additional tool in their educational arsenal, that'll be great. I think people who don't embrace that will probably fall behind. But the embracing is really happening. We've been thrilled to see it. Even some of the educational institutions that warned the most about ChatGPT at the beginning are now saying, we got this wrong, and this is going to be a critical part of what we're doing. And learners on their own are using this in very creative ways to kind of learn anything. So I think this is going to go very far. I think educational institutions should lean into this, and we're going to try to make it as cheap as we can.
Sure. I like the last bit in particular. The interesting part, one thing that I am going to finish this and then we'll go to questions, which is that Emin Mostik of Stability AI, what he actually argues is that for people in Pakistan and Bangladesh, which is where he was born, that actually that they will embrace this more perhaps than somebody who goes to an environment like this, because once some of the low-hanging fruit is taken away, things like outsourcing and stuff like that, they have no option to do this. And in a sense that educational opportunity was deprived to people, so that will equalize the playing field and then reduce inequality. That's his argument. Is it yours?
I think we don't know exactly yet how this is all going to play out, but it looks to me like this should be an equalizing technology in the world. The cost of intelligence, the inequality of access to intelligence, of people who can hire services that require a lot of cognability, a lot of human labor, this is a huge problem in the world. There's not enough, and if we can have way more, I think that is going to lift up the ceiling a lot. If we can make, certainly, for example, if you could make legal services 100 times more available, cheaper, whatever in the world, that helps poor people much more than it helps rich people, although it does help both. So I think we'll see this all be a big equalizing force. It's part of why we're so excited to do it.
Okay, so leaving on a positive note, let's move to questions. Now, I can't really see the audience, so I don't know who has the microphone and what's going on. Who has the microphone? Can you just, if you have the microphone, just ask your question.
Hi, Alberto Levi, Professor of Entrepreneurship at IE Business School. My question is about WorldCoin, and if you see WorldCoin, what is the impact of WorldCoin, OpenAI, what is the relationship in 5 years' time?
Yeah, they're separate companies, but I think what WorldCoin is doing to experiment with ways to verify human authenticity in a privacy-preserving way in a world where we're going to move to a lot more generated content is important. And this was something that's very important to me, figuring out how we're going to fairly distribute the wealth generated by AI, access to these systems, governance of these systems, is going to, I think, require some sort of technological approach, and it has to be global. You know, a lot of people are saying, well, I'm going to do it in my country, you do it in yours. That's not going to work. And so exploring technological solutions like WorldCoin, I think is a very valuable experiment to be running, so that as we contend with powerful AI in the world, we kind of know what our option space looks like for policy.
Okay. I mean, what do you like about the IAEA, the atomic energy? I mean, you've suggested that could be a model. What do you like about that?
Yeah. Again, I don't think there should be regulation of models below a capability threshold. But if someone is going to build superintelligence, or if several people are going to build superintelligence, I think that deserves at least as much care, global care, as we give to nuclear material, which I think is another example of a technology that the world came together and said, this has incredible upside and incredible destructive power. So let's agree how we're going to regulate this and have a global response. I think the IAEA has not been perfect. It's been far from perfect, but it's done a lot of things really well. And as we stare down this possibility of superintelligence, I think we are able to create a global organization that can do things like track people who are using a lot of chips, a lot of energy. We can require chip manufacturers to do all sorts of things to help with this process, to know who is training systems at a scale that could have truly catastrophic global impact. And I think we should watch that very carefully. Doesn't mean people can't do it, but there needs to be some sort of auditing, safety tests, dangerous capability evaluations that go through these models. So, you know, you're still allowed to have nuclear power, build nuclear power plants, enrich nuclear material, but we realize that this comes with risks, and so we have a global standard for it.
So, do you have a PDUM? What's your latest PDUM?
I don't understand how people say, you know, these precise numbers on it. I'm just not smart enough to do that. I think it is clearly non-zero, which means we should treat it with great care. But people that have these huge arguments about whether it's 4% or 9% or 16%, I don't know how they do that.
Yeah, I don't either. Okay. More questions?
Mr. Altman, thank you so much for speaking at our university. So as an AI student at this university, we really value the ability to utilize this API that you guys provide, and potentially in the future, an open source model for us to build upon. So I wanted to know your opinion, whenever using these tools, what are your thoughts on people building businesses or startups directly from these APIs and potentially an open source model? Do you think that's something that you want to cultivate, or something that's potentially a risk to your business? And alongside of that, what are your suggestions for a student studying AI or data analytics here at IE University to further delve deeper into these topics and learn how to build upon them?
It's not a threat to our business at all. Like, the more people building our platform succeed, the more we succeed. It's awesome. The one thing that I would caution against is that, you know, we're going to be a platform plus a killer app strategy. And for us, the killer app is this productivity super tool. So there were a lot of companies in the first wave that built just by like putting a little wrapper around the API. I think that's probably not good, because we're also going to expose that, and so are other people, via consumer products. But what people are doing now, where they're integrating intelligence as a layer into everything they do, I think is awesome. I think there are going to be gigantic new companies started this year. And in the same way that right after the iPhone launched, there were a few companies that called themselves mobile companies, and some of them got really big, but by now, like, no one says they're a mobile company because it'd be crazy not to have a mobile app. I think the same thing will happen with AI. We're going to go through this period of a lot of amazing AI companies that start. The whole world will wake up in a decade from now. No one will call themselves an AI company. It'll be expected everywhere.
Yeah, I want to say something in the medium term. I believe in the short term, a lot of things will happen. There are some apps that surge quickly and then go down. But in the medium term, one thing that I think the trend that I expect is people with very few resources using all these new technologies, including ChatGPT or like future versions of this system, be able to, just one or two people will be able to create massive businesses. In some sense, I've heard it's a meme that I'm the CEO and ChatGPT is my CTO. And there is a truth to that meme almost, because I think with the current technologies, like the cloud technology and all the things that AWS, Azure, and so forth offer, and so much help that you can get from these kind of systems like Copilot and ChatGPT, you'll be able to, like very few people will be able to have massive impact in the world. And what I will expect is proliferation of, entrepreneurship, and very few people having massive impact. Like WhatsApp is famous for having like 20 people.
Yeah, I think they had like 40 people at the time of the $20 billion acquisition. But I suspect there will be like billion-dollar companies run by literally one.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing thing. Like as the world gets at, like we're going to put out the best AI we can. Many other companies are too. And as the creative energy of the world gets unleashed into doing that, the economic growth, the opportunity, these one-person billion-dollar companies, it's going to be something to watch.
Yeah, it will happen. A one-person million-dollar company will happen, and it would be, it would be a moment in history.
Okay, we'll take another question.
So Spanish is the second largest language in the world, with almost 600 million people who speak Spanish. So could you tell us more about how Spanish is used in your pre-trained data sets, and if you have any Latino or Spanish people in your reinforced learning from human feedback?
Yeah, we do. We have a lot of Spanish pre-training data. We have people that give human feedback in Spanish. I'm curious how you all feel about it, like GPT-4 in particular in Spanish. Pretty good? Yeah, we tried. Okay, good to okay. We tried to make it pretty good. I think by the time of the next model, we'll be able to make it very good.
Yeah, it's good, but it can be much better if we help. So because yesterday, for example, we have the first lady in the academy that it's work coming from artificial intelligence to language, and one of the problems that she mentioned is that the resources of the language academy in Spain are still closed. So we need to open up this corpora, we need to open up this Latin American corpora, we need to open up the business corpora that have been only used for internal use of company in areas like banking or insurance or these kind of worlds that are still not fitting.
If any of you want to work with us to get great Spanish language training data and human feedback and kind of values into the system, we would love to.
Will do.
Okay. And will you pay them for their training data, Sam?
Of course, yes.
Okay. It's just that, like, money is important, right? Especially to people who don't have any. You find that much more important than people who do.
We would love to pay you to help with this, of course.
Okay, there you go. Okay, we've time for another question. Is there another question that we can get? There's someone standing up there. Yeah?
Hi. So thanks for doing this. My question is a bit like, so in the very early stages, beginning of the whole deep learning space, a lot of work was done out in the open, papers were being published, so other folks could also build on top of what is being done. And it seems like over the course of the space getting hotter and people starting to realize that there could be a lot of money made out of this, a lot of advances specifically in the AGI space and all of that's happening behind closed doors at this point. And it's just a question of, or rather want to know your thoughts on how do you think that would eventually align with, how do you align for-profit corporations having really powerful AI with the long-term, success of humanity, for example?
Yeah, look, it's a case-by-case decision. What we really try to optimize for, I won't pretend that we don't want to be successful ourselves and make a great company and have competitive reasons. Of course we do. Of course that's part of it. But the framework we really try to use is what will be the best thing for humanity. And I don't think it's right to open source everything. I don't think it's right to publish everything. We, I think, have published the key ideas for anyone to make a language model. I think if you look at the GPT-3 paper, if you look at the RLHF paper, if you look at the scaling laws paper, like we have put out what I think are the key insights to let this flourish. But there will be ideas that we don't put out, and there will be models that we open source and models that we don't. I think it's super fair to criticize us for any individual decision. We will get some of them wrong for sure, but we're trying to solve for like a very complex set of problems that are in conflict with each other.
Okay, final thoughts then, starting with Elena and then walking across. Final thoughts?
There is so much to do yet that we need to work a lot. That's a final thought. And of course, I think that we need to work together in order to move things ahead. I mean, now it's a moment of joining forces and work together in order to make the best AI happen. And not only the best AI, but also the best adoption. Because for me, the challenge is not only creating AI, but implementing in the big companies that are not run by 4 people, are run by many people that need to change their mind in order to adopt it quick.
Yeah, I mean, what's super curious about this space is that usually it's the investors are skeptical and the developers are enthusiastic, and now it seems to be the other way, which is the investors are super enthusiastic and it's the developers who are sort of a bit concerned, which is a new thing. Mo, last words. How do you feel excited about the future?
I'm super excited about the future. I think we have talked a lot about risk, how it will affect education, how it will affect our social institutions and so forth. I think these are all very critical, and there will be a lot of tough decisions along the way and a lot of the things that we need to get right. But I think at the end of the day, 10 years from now, we're going to look at the world that we created with AI, and I'm very optimistic about that world. I think the benefits that this technology will bring to the whole world, not just the richest countries, it will be massive, and it would be a really, really positive force for the whole world. And I think we should keep that positive attitude in mind during this whole process, and approach AI with caution, but very, very positive mindset.
Yeah. We clearly have to manage through some big risks here. I believe we'll do that. I'm thrilled that we're having the conversation globally now. Again, I think this is why it's so important to release this. But I think this will be the most enabling technology that humanity has ever seen. I think we should be so proud, so envious of what the people in the future are going to get to experience. Like the world is going to be tremendously different. I think tremendously better. Like the kind of the abundance that we will create with this, the unleashing of human creativity. It's been very inspiring on this trip, and here today, just before this, talking to developers about what they're going to build and their excitement level there. Like, I so believe that if you give people better tools, you get a much better future. And I thank you all for driving it forward.
Okay, so we'll leave it on that positive note. Muchísimas gracias, Elena. Thank you to Mo, and thank you also to Sam Altman.
I wish we had more time to talk to you all, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.